This is Rudo Radio coming to you from the 559.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Rudo Radio. It's the weekly wrestling podcast from SB Nation and Cage Side Seats. I'm Bill Hanstock, and with me as always is Mark Normandin, but we got a very special co-host this week. It's Alex Navarro of Giant Bomb. Hi, Alex.
Hi there. Very special. That was very nice of you to say. Thank you for that.
Well, you know, you're not any run-of-the-mill guest.
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm a little run-of-the-mill, but I appreciate you saying otherwise.
Why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
So I work for a site that is called Giant Bomb. It is ostensibly about video games, but it is also about professional wrestling and F1 racing and a variety of other things that we just feel like doing podcasts and other things about. I've been working in the video game industry in a variety of ways for pretty much my entire adult life. I've also worked in PR and a few other things. And we also have a professional wrestling podcast on the site that is made up of editors from the site and some other folks, where we just talk about what's going on in the world of wrestling, similar to what I think you do here.
Oh, good. And what's the name of that podcast in case people want to listen to it?
It is a premium. So we have a subscriber thing on our site, so it is for our premium users only, but it's called the Bombcast.
Got it. Perfect. Since you are a video game expert and also a wrestling expert,
yes,
what is the best wrestling video game of all time?
Ooh, all time. Boy, you know, I know the general consensus is that the Fire Pro series is considered the best, but Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 from the folks who made No Mercy and WCW NWO Revenge and all that. They're one of their Japanese only games. That is my personal favorite. That is the one I think is the best.
And why is that?
Great roster of talent from the late 90s, like All Japan, Noah, New Japan, all that stuff. It's just, I think, the best distillation of that style of N64 wrestling game. It definitely has like the best creator wrestler. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it even had like a little like light MMA system in it too for like a lot of that weird MMA wrestling crossover stuff that was happening in the late 90s. It's just, I think, the most fully featured of those games.
Mark, we've actually never talked about this on the podcast. What's your favorite? What do you feel is the best wrestling video game of all time?
Well, I haven't played that one, but it sounds awesome. But I also say this as someone who owns like every one of the games that company developed, you know, for North America. WrestleMania 2000 is probably the one I still go back to the most. No Mercy it's got more to do. It's, you know, polished. It's cleaner in a lot of ways. But I don't know. Sometimes I want to fire up like a 40-man Royal Rumble where only like pins and submissions are allowed and just play for an hour and a half, one single match.
There's something really novel about that one, too, because if you've been following the WCW stuff at that time, you know, those games were great, and the WWF games were just so bad around that time, like WWF Attitude, all that garbage that Acclaim was putting out. And there was a certain novelty, I think, to just seeing the WWF characters represented in a good game for the first time in a long time around that time.
Now,
yeah, and it had the career mode in it, and you could like make your own titles, and they hid a bunch of WCW guys in the creator wrestler tool.
That's right. Yeah, they had a lot of the at least the outfit format stuff in it.
Now, here's something interesting. Now, we can all agree that WWF Warzone was just garbage. Like,
it's a trash fire.
Can all agree on that. Actually, WWF Attitude is my favorite wrestling game of all time.
Trying to think what the diplomatic way to respond to that is.
Well, it's just
I played a lot of it.
Yeah, a big part of it is I played so much of it, and I have so many like awesome memories of playing that game nonstop with my best friend, and like just so many hours of having just epic matches in that game. And also, it was like the first game that I played that had Create a Wrestler in it. Now, also, I think a part of this is the fact that I didn't ever really own an N64 until like just a handful of years ago. So I played No Mercy at like friends' houses, but I didn't really get into it because like I was used to the Attitude system of moves where it's like, you know, the fighting game style of like button combinations, and I actually really like that. And I think that that's a very like, especially at that point, like we were so into fighting games, like we all knew like Street Fighter and we all knew Tekken or whatever, like all these fighting games that were like ingrained into our heads. So it's like that's just another style of fighting that you use in a video game. So that system made a ton of sense to me, and I tried to play No Mercy on N64. Like I like WCW NWO Revenge a lot, obviously, but when I tried to play No Mercy, I just felt like it was sort of like needlessly complicated. But I'm also horrible at video games, so I'm sure it's all a delightful melange of things like adding up to me not falling in line with the crowd and thinking that No Mercy is like, I enjoyed the SmackDown games for PlayStation more than I enjoyed playing No Mercy.
I mean, those early SmackDown games, I mean, they were kind of a breath of fresh air around that time too. You know, it's like those were exciting games, even if they weren't like the most sim-heavy games. And you know, so the editor-in-chief of our site, Jeff Gersman, he swears by Attitude. I never really liked those games, but I will definitely concede that Attitude was by far the best of those Acclaim style fighting kind of wrestling games.
Like I was super
those ECW ones were terrible.
Yeah, I was super excited for the ECW one to come out because like I had made like Rob Van Dam on Attitude, and I'm like, oh, it's my favorite wrestling game, and now they're gonna make it with ECW people, and it was so horrible.
Just trash. Just absolute trash. Now, Bill, as someone who doesn't play a lot of video games these days, and Mark, I think you said, at least to me before, that you play a little bit more. Have you tried any of the more recent ones from, I guess, nowadays 2K, and do you have any opinions of those?
Mark, you've played, like, all of them.
Yeah, except I bought whatever, not 16, maybe 15, and then never opened it. And then I was like, oh, I think I might be done playing these.
Yeah. I had a ton of fun playing through the WrestleMania, like the history of WrestleMania that I think was 2K. I think it was 2K14. I'm almost positive. And that was fun. Like I had a blast doing that, and it was fun. And again, I'm bad at video games, and at the time I had a smaller television, so it was like the reversal system was pretty frustrating. But I had a blast playing that, and then I went to the 2K event for 2K 15. And they had completely revamped, like, I played a demo, and I was like, oh, they've completely revamped the controls. This looks awesome. I love the grappling system. I love everything about it. So I pre-ordered 2K15, but I don't have a PS4. And I didn't realize that I was playing the PS4 version, and that engine was exclusive to the PS4 and Xbox One or whatever versions. And I didn't realize that 2K15 for PS3 was just a remake of 2K14. And so I was very, very, very disappointed with that. But I've played through almost all of the CM... I think I played through all of the CM Punk championship story. So I enjoy the storylines on that. I have fun. I don't really play video games with people these days because I don't really know a lot of people. So... yeah.
I play video games for a living, and I almost never play video games with other people unless it is a game that requires it. So,
right. I think they're fine. I just think that, you know, they need to... Like, I still don't understand why people buy a new copy of Madden every year. Like, it's the same video game. And WWE is, like, to that point. Like, they add, like, bells and whistles and stuff, but, like... I have a hard time getting behind the whole concept of DLC, and
I never had a big issue with the move to like adding characters to the games through DLC or whatever, because I think that's like the best way to maybe keep those rosters up to date.
Sure.
But I'm with you. As someone who does, in fact, get Madden every year, and if I wasn't reviewing it, I would still probably buy Madden every year. I can say definitively it's a sickness. There is no justifying it. It's just something you do because there's something in your brain that is wired in such a way. It's like, yeah, but I need the new football. I have to have I have to have the new. It's the same. I don't care. I just need to have the new. I just have to have it.
It happened to me with MLB The Show for a while, and I finally just cut myself off. So... my wife is always like, oh, are you going to get the new MLB The Show? It's like, you used to play that so much. I'm like, no. As far as I'm concerned, like, it didn't come out. I'm just going to ignore it whenever I go into a GameStop or whatever.
I have a huge bone to pick with baseball video games because as someone who again is horrible at all games, all video games, all games of any type, but love playing all games of any type. Whoever made the decision like across the board to be like, hey, you know what would make baseball games better is if you had to use an analog stick to swing the bat. Like, fuck those people. Fuck them right down to the ground because I cannot coordinate that ability to save my life and go to hell.
Yeah, the proliferation in sports video games of analog sticks as real-time movement simulators, like, you know, with hockey sticks and free throws in basketball and stuff. Like, fuck, I don't want anything to do with any of that.
Nope, burn it down. Burn it right down to the ground. One final video game question, and then we'll move on to actually talking about wrestling. What's the best 8-bit wrestling video game?
Ooh, 8-bit. Man, there weren't a lot. I mean, Pro Wrestling for the NES is, you know, it's a simple game, but it's a classic for a reason. Memorable characters, decent little fighting system for what it was back then. I think the 16-bit era is kind of when that stuff actually started getting good, like Super WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, like all that kind of stuff. Like that's when Fire Pro kind of started, you know, rearing its head around that time. Mm-hmm. I think that's when it really got good. But from that era, Pro Wrestling for the NES for my money.
Mark?
I mean, I'm staring at a copy of Pro Wrestling on a shelf in the room I'm recording a podcast, so I should probably go with that.
I'm gonna say Pro Wrestling for Sega Master System.
Ooh,
because that game fucking ruled. Are you familiar with that? It was only tag team wrestling, and it was for like make believe tag teams. But god damn, I loved that game so much.
Man, I never had a Master System. It was one of the few systems I never owned in any way. But I'm looking at this, and I do remember a friend of mine had this game, and we did play it a few times. That game was solid. That game was super solid.
That game rules. If anyone can find an emulator, I heartily recommend checking out that game. See, that's weird because like that was my first game system. I got Sega Master System, and then later I got an NES, but then I got the Genesis, and then I got a Dreamcast. Like I was sort of a Sega guy. Like I never owned a Super NES. I never owned an N64 until, later in life. I was the Sega nerd.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I was the Nintendo boy.
I think everyone was the opposite. That's why Sega bit the dust.
Yeah. I mean, there was there was a time when there was that heated rivalry, but that for me, the Sega Genesis era was about a month. I was like a transitional champion. I held a Genesis for about a month, and then it made its way to another friend of mine.
Awesome. All right. We unfortunately have to get the podcast proper started with a bit of a down note because China passed away this weekend. So let's get the sad news out of the way first, and then we'll move on to talking about happy stuff and our Pyback preview and all that good business. Guys, thoughts on China, her legacy, any China memories that you have, and or your thoughts on how WWE handled her passing?
I feel like I always forget how much I enjoyed China's run in WWE. But, going back through the network and anytime she shows up, on a pay-per-view or whatever I'm watching, it's always like, oh, hey, I remember this match. I remember this moment. And, because since the network has come back up, the first thing I think of whenever I hear China's name is always like her wielding that fireworks rocket launcher in her entrance. I thought it was good that WWE, acknowledged it and did a video package. And I know there are a lot of people out there who aren't happy that they didn't do more sooner, but I don't know, it's a very complicated situation, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not running a billion-dollar company and having to figure it out.
Well, you're also not running a billion-dollar company and having to figure it out on account of you were previously in a relationship with this person and that, very publicly known. I mean, I would echo that same sentiment of like, it had been a long time since I had sat there and actually tried to consider what I thought of China's run in WWE and really kind of thought about the things that went on when she was there. I'd always sort of like remembered her as this like very formidable presence. But if you actually start kind of drilling down into the details of like the things that they, were having her do during that run, like a lot of it was pretty forgettable. Not really her fault. It's just that they kind of put her into these very boring situations outside of some of the more, like some of the more landmark stuff, like her winning the IC belt, entering the Royal Rumble, that kind of stuff. Like a lot of the storylines around here were pretty garbage. I mean, and that could be said of a lot of the Attitude Era, to be fair.
Yes, most of it.
Yeah, but like you sit there and you look through it, and just like even with all that cruft sifted through, like the things she did in WWE were monumental for their time. And as a performer, like she was very much up to the task. Like she did, like they weren't trying to sell her as this person who could hang with men, and it didn't, like it wasn't something that didn't feel like it didn't feel wrong. It felt like, well, yeah, I mean, dude, she's hanging, she's in there, she looks like she belongs in there with any other WWE superstar, male or female.
Yeah.
And it's like such a microcosm of like everything that could go wrong with how WWE treats its women superstars, or at least especially how it did in the past. Like suddenly there was this relationship thing going on, and that turned sour. She was kind of excised from the company. Her life kind of went in a dark direction, and the company refused to kind of acknowledge that for a long time. Like that, hey, she was a big part of what made our company interesting back in the day, but we're not going to honor that because, oh, by the way, she did some porn. Like that was a really weird, flimsy excuse to throw out there, especially when you consider that isn't Tammy Sitch in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, but she didn't do actual full porn until just this past year.
But would that then suddenly excise her from the Hall of Fame? Like if you're
that's the thing is like she did those videos like pretty much immediately after Triple H went on record as saying that that's why China wasn't in the Hall of Fame. So it was definitely interesting timing for sure. Actually, I think the timeline went like this. I think that Triple H said what he said about China, meaning that they're not considering her for the Hall of Fame because they're worried about people Googling her and stuff like that. And then I think shortly thereafter, because Tammy has had a lot of DUIs in recent years, and she's gone to treatment on the company dime a lot, and she became the first person to be cut off from the wellness program recovery portion of the thing. They said like they said she's done, she's gone to recovery through the wellness program like X number of times, and she doesn't show, her latest DUI doesn't indicate that she has any, like, she's not taking this seriously, basically. Like, she keeps relapsing and keeps going back and keeps relapsing and keeps going back, like, so we're cutting her off. And then she made the deal with Vivid.
Right. But in the end, like, she's still technically in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and, I think the wellness stuff is definitely like there's valid cause there for them to say, hey, maybe we don't want to have this person represent our brand ever again. I get that.
Yeah. On
a personal level, I don't think porn should necessarily exclude you from doing that because, for being in the Hall of Fame, because it's like, whatever, you do whatever you do with your life afterward. The China stuff is rough, though, because, there were, like, she was... I forget but she was on Celebrity Rehab at one point, wasn't she?
She was on The Surreal Life. She was probably on Celebrity Rehab as well. I don't know. I think that she never... I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I believe that China never officially reached out to WWE to take them up on that aspect of the wellness program. Like, to go to rehab through WWE.
Yeah, she was on Celebrity Rehab in 2008, it looks like.
Okay. But that's interesting to me that, that's probably an avenue. Like, I don't know, but it seems to me, and I'm not trying to, like, victim blame or anything, but, in recent years, she was making the documentary. She was really campaigning hard to get back into WWE's good graces and to get into the Hall of Fame and to be acknowledged and recognized for what she did. And it seems to me like maybe a few years back, she could have reached out and tried to reconnect to the company through that avenue. Like, hey, I want to get my life back together and I want you to help me do it. Like, that could have been a way to bridge the divide. But again, this is all speculation. Like everything that we're talking about with China, with the company, is speculation on our part because we don't know how deep the bad blood goes with her and the company, or how much her relationship with the company or their relationship with her contributed to her demons and her addictions. We don't know. All we know is that the company definitely could have handled her legacy and her being an alive human being better. But we also know that all big sports companies, all big sports promotions and leagues are going to be involved in some fucked up stuff, and people are going to die. And then through PR and marketing, people are going to have to scramble to try and retroactively make things as right as they can, or at least put forward the best possible, most palatable face for the consumers of that product.
Do you think what they put out on this week's Raw was them putting out their best face? Because, I mean, it's good that they acknowledged her on some level. I never expected WWE to go whole hog and, do the major, like the bell salute at the beginning and the whole roster out there for that, because the distance between them just didn't necessarily feel like that was what they were going to do. But do you think that video package and sort of the torrent of tweets that kind of went out was enough to honor that legacy?
I think that it's sort of I don't know if it's the best they can do, but it was certainly acceptable. I think that, a lot of wrestlers die, and most wrestlers that die just get the title card up top, like Blackjack Mulligan or Balls Mahoney. But the people who are important to the fabric of WWE get, a little bit more, and they get a video package. And I think that that's acceptable for China. I don't know if I was surprised that she got a video package, but I was glad that she got a video package, at least on some level.
Right.
Gino Morosco and Sean Reuter just talked about this on Tuesday's Cage Side Live. They talked about the fact that it didn't have a voiceover. It wasn't the company saying things about her. It was letting tweets speak for her legacy. Tweets from prominent wrestlers and important wrestlers. But it wasn't the company saying anything about her, so it wasn't really the company taking a stance, which I think was maybe even more appropriate. But it also, when you start, Gino and Sean talked about, when you start arguing about, what's appropriate, what do you need to do, you start putting a value on someone's life and being this is what they were worth, or this X amount of time devoted to talking about that person is what, they deserve, and who can say?
But, in a way they say that every time they do one of these promos. It's like you said, some wrestlers get, the title card and the brief salute, and some get, the entire roster out there, saying goodbye. And so they're already making that value judgment every single time they do one of these. And I'm not saying, they have to change that radically. If this is the system they have and the families involved are okay with that, then, by all means. But
right.
They already make that call every single time they choose whether to or not, and what level of honor they want to pay to right. those superstars.
I think that if they had done a full roster 10 bell salute, that would have been a little bit too cheap and a little bit too. It would have been a lot false, because right. outside of Triple H and Stephanie and Vince, who the fuck is in the company right now that actually worked with China?
Right.
All of those people were influenced by her. But no one...
It would have felt forced, too, considering right. that, we know the relationship was not in the greatest of places.
Yeah, exactly. So, WWE, yes, they fucked up real bad when she was alive, but they're in a position right now where they cannot win, no matter how
right.
they handle it. So I think that from a marketing, PR, company, business standpoint, they're handling it correctly.
Yeah. To be fair, they backed themselves into that corner, but yeah, you're right.
Right.
There's no way to get out of that corner in a nice way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. From a fan perspective, WWE is fucked, and there's no way to make this right. From a business standpoint, from an objective standpoint, they're handling it by the book and correctly.
Yeah.
And some people have made, you know, bones about like Stephanie McMahon being the first person to comment publicly, but I mean, I don't think that that's like, that's like coordinated, and I think in some ways it's sort of appropriate that she's the first person to comment on it.
Also, it's like 12:30 in the morning.
Right.
Like,
she had, like, the news broke like 2 minutes before she like posted an Instagram. Like, I was up, I was watching Twitter, and like the news was coming across that China had died, and like 2 or 3 minutes after that, Stephanie McMahon tweeted like an Instagram of like, hey, getting in a midnight workout feels great, and like an Instagram photo or video of her workout, and she deleted that like pretty much immediately, and then, you know, posted her statement about China.
Yeah, I was going to bed right as I saw the news. Like, I was just about to put my phone down and go to sleep, and then that stuff. So it was late night, and yeah, I mean, and also she's top brass in the company. So, like, you know, if it wasn't her, like, having anyone from that level in that company, I think was, you know, kind of equally important.
Right. Yeah, it's rough stuff, and, you know, I wish that she weren't dead. I wish that she were still alive and the company could have, you know, I wish she could have gotten back in the company's good graces while she was still alive and gotten into the Hall of Fame, but I'm sure we'll see her in the Hall of Fame within the next few years.
I'd like to ask you guys a couple of things. A thing that some friends of mine were talking about recently, and, you know, the idea of old wrestlers dying young is not a new one by any stretch. It's something that, you know, I think that anyone who has been enjoyed this form of entertainment for a long time has had to reckon with at some point. But it also feels to me like there is an era where there is something of a cutoff for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the superstars of today, like, you still see wellness violations here and there, but it doesn't feel like the same atmosphere of just straight up, you know, fucking debauchery.
Yeah, it's absolutely yeah.
No. And I'm wondering if you know, if there's going to be a point where we finally stop seeing this happen time and time again. These, you know, like, especially, you know, superstars that don't, you know, leave the company and then, you know, don't go on to have great success outside of WWE. Like, I still don't feel like a lot of those folks now that are in WWE that maybe aren't long for their careers there are necessarily going to sink into addiction the way that a lot of other wrestlers sort of did, either out of, you know, just kind of mental necessity, or just, you know, that was just kind of where they were at even when they got into the business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that generational divide has already happened. Like, we went a really, really long time without like a glut of dead wrestlers. Like, the longest since I've been a wrestling fan. Like, and now we lost a ton of big names all in a row. Like, we lost Dusty, we lost Roddy, we lost, Blackjack Mulligan, but of all the people that have passed away recently, like in the past couple of years, like, Roddy died, you know, of like cancer, and like Dusty died, you know, of natural causes. Like, he was an old dude that wasn't
died.
Yeah. And like Blackjack Mulligan was like 70 something, and China and Balls were the two,
and Axel,
and Axel were the three that have died young, that are sort of like, I think that we're right at the tail end of like wrestlers dying young because of living the wrestling lifestyle. Like, we're at the tail end of that. Like, WWE has banned so much, like, they've banned like chair shots to the head, and they're really serious about concussions. Like, you know, Daniel Bryan just cut his whole career short because, you know, they refused to clear him because they were worried about, you know, I'm sure that the driving force behind that is like, how would it look if this guy died on our watch? But like, that's still being concerned for someone's safety, bottom line. So, you know, they're treating concussions and injuries incredibly seriously. The wellness program is a really good thing. They're paying for anyone who's ever been employed by the company for any amount of time to go to rehab under their watch if the person asks, which is like invaluable. Like, yeah, it requires the person to ask, but, you know, that's true of like any rehab. You can't force anyone to go to rehab. Right. But so I think that they're doing a lot of good with the protocols that are in place, with the wellness program that's currently in place, and also like the party, like, it is night and day of like what the culture was like in the 80s and 90s. Like, now the people who are wrestling, even on the indies, like the majority of the people who are wrestling are like nerds who like go home and play video games. Like they don't like no one fucking goes on a coke bender. Like
yeah, like Big Show's vape habit seems like the most troublesome thing you see these days.
Like there's a lot of wrestlers who love weed, but weed's not going to kill anybody. Like
like Rob Van Dam's going to take 9 months off to go do yoga and smoke it up, and then when he comes back, he still seems like he's in pretty good condition, all things considered.
But the 80s and 90s, it was about partying all night and then going to the next town, and the stories are innumerable and legendary of like. We did blow and steroids and amphetamines to stay up all night and fuck as many people as possible. Then we popped a handful of somas to sleep on the flight before we got to the next town. And then we'd bump and do it again. Like, that's fucking crazy. And also...
all of that made me so happy when I heard, like, Randy Orton, after he wrestles, just goes on his bus and goes to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, just... like, that's so much more encouraging than
and also like
what it was 20 years ago or whatever.
And also like CrossFit and fitness culture is such a big part of like the wrestling culture now. Like it's all about being as healthy as you possibly can, as opposed to like, we don't actually have to be in shape. We just have to be in ring shape. So let's go party all night and drink as much as we can and do as much blow as we can and, make it to the next town. Like it's so different. And like it's sort of amazing that people like Sabu and Sandman are still alive. The people that like I think we're really at the tail end of like that whole sort of like ex WWE wrestler dies horribly sort of thing. Like we can't obviously diagnose mental illness. Like who among us knew that like Mike Awesome was gonna commit suicide or whatever. But I think like you look at a guy like Chris Masters who like has left the WWE a couple times under like pretty depressing circumstances, but you talk to him in person, he's happy, he's making a good living, like wrestling like all over the planet, and he's staying in good shape, and he doesn't seem to have any like drug problems. Like Carlito's the same way, like there's so many, Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas like wrestling in ROH in Japan. Like there's careers for these guys beyond wrestling and beyond WWE, and none of them really seem particularly interested in like, oh well, now that I'm not in WWE, I can get hooked on meth,
Yeah.
Like even like Just Incredible just famously kicked like a heroin addiction. So.
And that is, oh boy, I actually hadn't heard about that one, but that's about as rough as addictions go.
Yeah. So I think that things are getting better. Like, I think we've already seen that generational divide. And I think that the way that wrestling culture has evolved and adapted, because, like, all these young people that are growing up now, like, these people that are setting the world on fire, Zack Sabre Jr. and Ricochet and, Matt Sydal and all these, like, just top-level, like, all these top-level indie wrestlers, like, they grew up watching all their heroes die. Like, they grew up, like, I can't wait to see Eddie Guerrero wrestle this week. Oh, his heart exploded in a hotel room. Oh, I can't wait to see Chris Benoit wrestle at the pay-per-view. Oh, he killed his whole family and then killed himself. Like, they grew up watching all of their heroes die. So I think that, like, in talking to so many indie wrestlers and so many current wrestlers, like, one of the things that's foremost on their mind is, like, I'm not going to end up like that. Like, I'm going to make better choices. I'm going to, wrestling for me is just about the art form of wrestling, and it's not about anything that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think just as an addendum to that, there's also just a cultural shift, too. You see it in the indies, like, among guys that work with each other a lot, and I think you see it more in the WWE these days, and it's something that even, like, Vince McMahon has groused a little bit about. The way that the people who work there are treated more like a troupe than like a group of individuals all kind of trying to climb over each other. And I think that, you see a lot more of these guys kind of looking out for each other in a way that maybe wasn't as encouraged back in the day. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Okay, let's talk about some happier stuff. There's a new NXT champion, and you guys both happen to be in the building to see this title change. Holy crap.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to start off this one?
I knew something was up just because they had cameras, which is not normal for a house show, and the lighting was a little bit different. But, I didn't expect it to be this kind of something. I thought, maybe they're doing some filming for Breaking Ground or, like, they're just doing clips for something eventually on the network. But man, that was about as big a geese as you can get. People should go to every house show ever now, even though there probably won't be another title change on them for 20 years.
Bill, I have to shout you out here. I saw you on Twitter earlier that day kind of collecting a few things from folks around the WWE, like indicating, man, everyone's talking about this show a lot more than they normally do house shows. Maybe something's going on here. So that allowed me to make the bold prediction to the folks I was with, say, gee, I wonder, maybe there's going to be a title change tonight. And lo and behold, I looked like the smartest dude in the room.
Nice.
All your fault. Thank you for that.
Glad I could help.
Yeah, that was a really fun show. I've never been to any NXT taping ever, prior to that, or any kind of show from them. The closest I got was like Access 2 years ago at SummerSlam, and on top of just being like a good set, a good mixture of the main talent and some of the younger guys who haven't really debuted on TV yet. That main event was fire, dude. Like that was a damn good match. Like they've had several, but that was probably like top 2 or 3 between those two.
I think that was the best one that they've had. And I'm excited that they're showing it on NXT this week. So that I can have other people who weren't there, confirm or deny that. Yeah, they did a great job handling the crowd. The crowd was so hot for that match. And I think part of it is because this house show, like if it had been just 3 hours of tapings, and then at the end of the tapings, there was a title change on television instead of on a takeover, everyone just would have thought that was an amazing run of 3 episodes in a row.
I'm trying to think, like there were a few highlight matches on that show beyond just the main event. The Ciampa match and the local boy whose name I'm escaping me.
Christopher Gerard, former Biff Busick, which is what everyone was chanting during the entire match.
Awesome.
Yeah. That they had a really great match with a fun, unexpected ending. I think the crowd was a little off for Bliss, Asuka, but they had a good showing for the most part. American Alpha, everyone loves those dudes, so they will watch them, fight the Revival as many times as they are allowed to. Wasn't quite like takeover level, but it was, if that had been the takeover match, everyone would have been happy with it too. He did the rolling German. That's all anyone wanted to see.
Yes. Gerard finished the match against Tommaso with a half Nelson suplex and then immediately followed up by running at him full speed and uppercutting him in the face. And then pinned him.
Damn good looking uppercut.
That was something he used on the indies a lot, but I wasn't sure if they were going to have him do that, in NXT because they like centralizing finishers so much, but seeing that because he is aggressive and hits so hard, and it's good that they're like letting him be still himself. It's probably a good sign for what they have planned for him in the future.
And I heard that there was a fantastic Manny Andrade match as well.
Yes,
it was him and it was Aries, right?
Yeah, and the whole crowd was pro Austin Aries from the beginning, like screaming at Manny like he was, just a random dude there to lose to Aries. And it took about 5 minutes into a 10-minute match for everyone to like change their minds and be like, nope, I like this guy. He's great.
Yeah. At the beginning of the match, like people were chanting "No way, Jose" at him. To be fair, people immediately in their vicinity were like, "That's not that guy. Stop that." So a few idiots. But by the time that match got to its halfway point, everyone was super in Manny's corner on that one.
Yeah, I can't wait for him to debut. I don't think it's going to be very much longer because I've been watching that guy at NXT do NXT dark matches since Royal Rumble, and like every crowd he gets in front of, people are like, "Oh yeah, this guy."
Yeah, it did not take long.
It's funny that we sat here and we talked about just about every match on that card except the Nakamura match, which I'm going to go out. I'm going to say that was the most condensed version of the Nakamura act you are going to see ever. And even that is still relatively entertaining.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The crowd was really into it. He was doing his whole shtick. He got, I think you were talking about the little shaken leg corner thing he does, Bill.
Yeah.
Last week, and the crowd seemed to be really, enjoying that.
Good.
They were laughing, and he did it twice, like threw Samson into another corner. Also, the crowd just hates Samson, but like,
right.
I feel like it's in a good way. Like they really hate him, but it's going to be the kind of thing they can lean on and use. And
yeah,
because he's talented and he has the look and everything, they just need to figure out like exactly who he is.
Do you think he looks too much like Damian Sandow?
I mean, no one would know that because Sandow's not on television ever anymore.
Yeah, I was say by the time he actually makes it up to the main roster, we may not be worrying too much more about poor Damian.
No.
Well, maybe Sandow can be his stunt double.
Yes.
God.
I think that if one of those guys gets released, it's going to be Samson before Sandow.
Yeah, Sandow's too...
He's a proven commodity.
He is, but like it feels like they just don't think he is anymore.
I think that if they didn't know his worth, he would have already gotten released. But
I don't know.
You were going to ask me a question.
He was on the roster.
Yes, I do. I talked to him about it. But you're going to ask me something about Elias Samson, I think, Alex.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, what is it that dude feels like he's missing? Because it does feel like there's one piece from him that just isn't there yet. Like, he's got, he's decently charismatic. Like, he can obviously go in the ring. He doesn't feel like he's being carried necessarily. But I don't know. There's just something about the on a steel horse I ride gimmick that is just not 100% doing it for me yet. I
think the biggest problem with it is that they never really defined what his deal is, and they still haven't. Like,
yeah,
they're like basically like the first like 2 months of him being on television was like the announcers like talking to each other like, "What's this guy's deal? I don't know. I don't get it." Like, that's not how you build a character. No. And even when like Steven Regal like sat down with him to like make his match against Nakamura on NXT television, like he sat down in the alley and he's like, "I don't know what you're doing, but anyway, I'm making a match."
I think he just doesn't read enough as like an actual drifter. Like he needs more face tattoos, to really like he needs to have like a really misbegotten looking pit bull that follows him around.
Yeah. I think that they just don't want to say like this is a homeless guy. Like,
right. That kind of is implied with the word drifter,
right?
Isn't it?
I do like that he's dedicated to his guitar and isn't using it to hurt people. Where he's actually like, no, this is like my friend. Like, why would I use this to hurt people?
Like, I
need this to play.
I want him to be a modern day drifter, like Kai the Hitchhiker, the guy who killed that guy with an axe. You know what I'm talking about?
As long as he doesn't actually kill people.
Right.
This isn't Lucha Underground.
Right. That would be
bad.
He
could kill people with his axe, which is his guitars. So then he would have to go to actually hurting people with his guitar, which he says he doesn't want to do, but maybe he would have to.
It has two meanings. Any other thoughts about the NXT show that you guys got to see? You got to see history made.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only question left is, what does this mean for Balor? And I assume it just means that he will be called up here sometime soon. Because the whole thing with Joe winning the title was that they set up an injury angle where he attacked him on the outside. The ref threw up the X and did the whole thing, but then they both ran into the ring and then did their finish. But they tried to sell it very hard, like he had hurt his ankle and he was, like they had an ambulance come up and show up in the, it was like ready to go as soon as the show was over, but it was kind of obvious that it was not legit. Mm-hmm. So I assume this is building to him debuting either at Payback or Raw afterward, right?
Yeah, I don't think he leaves NXT immediately. He'll probably do the Kevin Owens thing and do both.
Sure.
Until he has his rematch. It does feel like because Joe beat Finn as Finn instead of as the Demon, that maybe we'll finally get a stipulation. Joe saying, "Oh, you can't be the Demon," just to kind of keep that safe and don't have him lose right before he's going to be main roster full time.
Right.
There are also those whispers about maybe doing a cage match, which makes me wonder if, why would you need a cage? Is it to keep the Balor Club out of the match? So it feels like it's going to be one of those blended stories where Finn will be getting his send off instead of winning the title back or anything like that.
And that's a good segue, because I want to talk about two things from Raw before we get into our Payback preview, because I think that probably in our Payback preview and predictions we'll just talk about stuff that happened on Raw, you know, as we talk about it. The first part is that there's a whole new level of Bullet Club intrigue / Balor Club intrigue that went down on Raw. We got Anderson and Gallows' in-ring debut. We got to see their gear. We got to hear their theme music. They beat the Usos, and then the end of Raw I thought was handled just absolutely perfectly, where, you know, you saw them interacting with AJ a couple times throughout the night. You had them coming out of AJ's locker room, and then they ran down, they beat down Reigns, and then AJ comes out, he pushes them away from Reigns, and then Reigns gets up and he sees AJ's in the ring, and he was just beaten down, so he hits AJ. So that takes AJ out. Anderson and Gallows jump in and start beating on Reigns again. Reigns fights them off, and then AJ hits Reigns because Reigns hit him. So you've got just everyone, all these pieces moving independently, and no one really knows what's going on, including the people involved. So I thought that was handled really perfectly, and we still don't know whose side AJ is on, and we don't know what's going to go down. What are your guys' thoughts about how this was handled, and what do you think is going to be the resolution at Payback on Sunday?
I just want to very quickly, for the last, I'm sure you guys have talked about this over the last few weeks, but man, Raw's been real good this last month, hasn't been?
For sure.
Like,
yes.
I've been one of the more complainy wrestling podcast hosts out there.
Yeah, it was a fun episode.
But man, like the shows have been really solid, and I even thought like this was probably overall the weakest of the last four, but like still really strong for the most part. And that ending you described, like that's the kind of wrestling intrigue that I feel like has been largely absent from WWE storytelling for a long time. And part of that is, you know, you cannot underestimate the importance of surprises in telling stories in wrestling. The idea of bringing in people who are unknowns, or at least very least not the regular roster folk, and having someone like Bullet Club be able to debut against a major team and win and sort of like present themselves that way, like that shit's huge. Like that's a big thing that will get people interested in watching your product. And I think that
it's so fresh after the Authority stuff for years.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, I think the will they, won't they storyline they have built up with this stuff is great, because it doesn't matter now if AJ wins. Because if you do something where AJ doesn't win, that's still interesting. If he does win, that's insane, and that's awesome, and there's crazy shit you can do around that. They're not going to do it, but I get that. But that's, you've set up the possibility of crazy shit happening, and that's something a pay-per-view like Payback almost never has.
Mark, thoughts?
I agree with everything. Yeah, I think it feels fresh not having the Authority there too, because you can have other kind of demons like the Bull or whatever we're calling them, and you know, focus stories in other places that even if they're, you know, in wrestling terms not new, they certainly feel new right now.
Right.
So, and that's part of like even before Finn Balor dropped the title to Samoa Joe, I was feeling like Bullet Club would feel concerned. They would turn to Finn, who would make his main roster debut that way, and you know, they turn on Styles for rejecting their help, and Styles wouldn't win the title, but then you'd have this built-in story between Styles and his old friends, who are getting, you know, a serious push out of the gate. Finn and Reigns would still be able to like move on to whatever, you know, whoever his next opponent or next challenge is going to be. So, like Alex said, that's a lot going on for you know, the main event of something like Payback.
So are we all in agreement then that we are each of our predictions is that this will reveal to be the Balor Club and that AJ will be at odds with them?
I think that's where I'm leaning, yeah. I think the only other version you can do of that is you take the statement of we are evening the odds, and then you throw Balor into that mix with an AJ heel turn. You could do that, but I don't think that's what they're doing. I think what they're doing is they're setting up Anderson and Gallows to work with Balor and AJ to feud with them for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, we haven't had any hints about you know, Balor as a heel, but you know, from his time in New Japan, we know that's a guy who should be heel. and it'll have that much more impact and resonance with everyone because everyone knows him as a face here.
Yeah.
But people love Styles so much that they'll feel betrayed by Balor, and it should work really well and do a good job of getting both guys into a serious main event position.
All right, so since we're all predicting the same thing, basically, do we think Balor shows up at Payback or at Raw the next night?
I would think Raw. I think you let just the guys you've already introduced do things at Payback to keep things not so confusing, and then we'll, in the explanation we get the next night, out comes Balor.
Yeah, and I imagine if they do that, they probably tease it as like, here's the debut of Finn Balor, and they don't necessarily reference the Bullet Club aspects of it, but then, they kind of tease it out over the night, I would think.
Okay, the other thing from Raw is that Vince McMahon stated that he will be announcing who is going to control Raw going forward at Payback, whether it's going to be Stephanie or Shane. Who do you guys think it's going to be?
Well, if we're looking at the ratings, strictly, I guess it's got to be Stephanie, right? Because the ratings haven't actually been that great the last month.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be Shane. Just time for them to hit, total reset on things and keep moving with what they've been doing the last month plus, and it sets them up for their eventual authority return because they're never going away. But
right,
it will make the show feel different long enough, and the ratings will come back. And if they don't come back, then it's a good thing they got all the YouTube subscribers they do. And
my prediction is that Vince is actually going to announce that there is going to be some sort of match that decides control of Raw, and Shane and Stephanie will both have to pick a representative that will fight at Extreme Rules, and Stephanie will clearly pick Triple H. Then Shane will pick someone, maybe himself. Who cares?
Cena.
Yeah, Cena. Yes, there you go. Well, Cena's not supposed to come back until the week after Extreme Rules, but who knows?
He said he'll be back for that Raw, so maybe maybe that'll be his first Raw back.
Ooh, yeah. Anyway, that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be a match that decides it, but I don't know. I hope that Shane sticks around, but who even knows what's going to happen? I certainly don't.
Does he a company somewhere?
Is that what?
Does he still run a company somewhere? That's what he was doing.
I believe he does not run that company anymore.
Okay,
but he's on the board of a lot of companies. He's still a businessman. So
right.
But he's just right now. He's just week to week with WWE.
Gotcha.
I get the sense whenever he actually does win control, if he does win control officially, we won't see him on TV that much anymore. It'll just kind of things will happen NXT style, where maybe you occasionally see something from him, but otherwise it's just the universe is moving on its own.
Laptop, and he will get emails from the general manager of Raw. It won't be anonymous anymore.
Shane McMahon will live under the ring.
Yes, this all makes sense. All right, let's get on to our Payback preview and predictions. The pre-match, the pre-pay-per-view kickoff is, once again, United States title Kalisto versus Ryback.
What is "We are destined to do this forever" in Spanish? I don't know it, but that does feel like where we're at now, right?
Yeah.
They've been keeping this feud mostly to SmackDown, right?
They've been keeping it mostly just whatever.
Wherever they can stash it until they can give the U.S. title back to Cena, basically.
I don't even know.
I like their Mania match.
Yeah.
That was the best Ryback match, in a walk-off in a long time. That dude is not that fun to watch anymore, but, against someone like Kalisto, who is so unlike him, they squeezed a good match out of Ryback.
I hope they get a chance to do a lot more at Payback than they did at WrestleMania, because I did enjoy that WrestleMania match, but it was pretty bare bones. So I hope that they get a chance to do more, and one way or another, I hope this is the end of the feud. So either Kalisto retains in convincing fashion without having to use an exposed turnbuckle to do so, or Ryback becomes U.S. champion and we move on and do something else.
I know which of those outcomes I like and which one I don't. You can imagine which one I like and which one I don't.
Well, even with all of the new faces on Raw these days, and all of the new faces in the company, and all of the injuries that have been happening, like, it's pretty clear that WWE doesn't seem very especially interested in investing time and effort in Kalisto, which is a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, they've never been real great at knowing what to do with luchadors that aren't Rey Mysterio. And I imagine in this case, like, there are enough people in that company that are sufficiently impressed with what he can do in the ring to where they feel obligated to continue to promote him in a significant way. But also, they don't really know what to do with him in a storyline sense, because at this point, he's basically just a really flashy presence that they know they can get good matches out of, and they're not sure, like, what that dude's story even is.
Right. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be on the road to being our generation's Rey Mysterio.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there was a lot of hope for the original Sin Cara when he first came up, and that did not turn out. But Kalisto from that, like, has hit the ground running in WWE in a way that people of that wrestling style don't always do.
Right.
And he has adjusted himself in such a great way to that style of wrestling, and still was able to retain, what it is that makes that dude exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels like this weird thing where, like, they know he can be huge, so they're not letting him be huge yet. Like, they're not ready for that moment, so, like, they kind of did that with Neville to a degree, too, where it's like, we want you to know this guy's cool and can do cool things, and we like him, but we don't want you to like him too much yet. So
that's like Apollo right now. It's like they're getting him involved in some stuff, but nothing that's like, banner stuff right now.
Yeah. We talked about this last week. Like, Apollo Crews needs to get a storyline. He never got one in NXT. He hasn't gotten one in WWE. He needs to be part of a story.
I was actually kind of bummed they wrote off that thing he was doing with the Social Outcasts, because, like, whatever you think of the Social Outcasts, like, they're a heel stable, and him fighting an entire heel stable at the bottom rung to start is not a bad place to go.
Yeah. But as soon as I saw that, like, I knew, like, this is a great story. I bet this is going to be a 1-week story. I really wish it was like a whole pay-per-view cycle of a story, but
totally. Like,
alas.
Make him for a month, do something with it, but yeah, just nothing yet.
Yeah. All right, so who are we predicting for Kalisto versus Ryback?
Kalisto.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Kalisto too.
My heart says Kalisto. Yeah, Kalisto retains. Who cares? They don't know what they want to do with either of these guys. So yeah, why not Kalisto? All right, Dolph Ziggler versus the Lone Wolf, Barry Corbin.
Prediction.
Go ahead, Mark.
Official prediction is Baron Corbin launches him into the sun. That is my Baron Corbin prediction for everything.
As someone who uses a lone wolf gimmick in his own wrestling travails, my natural tendency is to vote against Baron Corbin for gimmick infringement. That said, this is very clearly like his get over with the crowd moment, and Ziggler is there to do that for him. So I'm going Corbin.
Yeah, I think that Robbie Corvette's going to win this one, and Dolph Ziggler is going to do what he did for Tyler Breeze, which is lose his first match against him. And then hopefully the same thing won't happen to Barry Corbin that happened to Tyler Breeze.
Do you think there will be an end of days on the outside of the ring after the match is won? Just, for emphasis.
I mean, I hope so. But I
think
the one that happens inside the ring that ends the match will be enough.
I wanted to put him through the ring with the move. I wanted there to be a gimmick ring where he just goes straight to hell, which is, as we know, is canonically underneath the ring.
Perfect. Not a lot to say about the match. It should be good. Good match. Both of these guys are talented performers, so hopefully Corbin gets a chance to get some more high-profile stuff going on. I mean, winning the Andre is a good way to start, and hopefully this trend will continue.
Yeah, they could use a big, tall heel who is not, like, 45 years old. So
or is not in the Wyatt family.
Yeah, also that.
Oh, so kind of a bummer. The Wyatt family are on the poster of Pyback.
Oh.
And, like, when you go to WWE.com/shows, like, the Pyback logo is, like, all four of the Wyatt family, like, Bray smiling really big.
What do you think that was supposed to be the thing there? Because, they had kind of
They were
been
supposed to fight the League of Nations.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that happened. all the
So
things happened.
at least Bray sounds like he's not going to be out for a super long time.
Yeah,
I feel like we've gotten so much like worst case scenario injury news, and then it's like, oh, Neville's not completely broken, and Wyatt's only out for 6 weeks, and it's like, oh, only 6 weeks, okay.
Yeah, he'll be back. I think shortly after the next pay-per-view should be. So we got Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho in the battle of "You Stole My Show."
They were a lot of fun on one day. I love when Chris Jericho's when all his improv is just awful.
Yeah,
and he just keeps yelling "stupid idiot" and things like that repeatedly, and he was just losing his mind with Ambrose. So I'm excited to see them actually like hit each other instead of just try and make fun of each other. Although it's been entertaining on the way there.
Yeah, I mean, those two guys as talkers, that's what they do. And, I think that more so than Lesnar, which I was super disappointed. I assume you guys probably weren't super into it either, but that Mania match with Lesnar was disappointing to me on just about every level.
Yep.
So I feel like this could be a good, rebound match for him. Those are two guys that I feel like have complementary styles, and Jericho has been doing his best work since he got over the whole "I need the crowd to like me" thing. He, as a heel, he has been great, and I think they will have some fun together. I'm picking Ambrose on this one because, boy, he sure does need to win a match.
Yeah, I think Ambrose is going to win this one too.
I feel like this is going to run another cycle. I think it's going to run to Extreme Rules. So if that's the case, it would make sense for Jericho to win this first one. But yeah, just because Ambrose has lost so many in a row, I will also pick Ambrose to win this one.
I think Jericho can be really shitty about losing and get another chance at Extreme Rules, just with him like picking the stipulation or whatever. And then Ambrose can, triumphantly win both major matches of the feud.
That would be cool.
Yeah, nobody needs to
he can sure need it.
Nobody needs to win matches less than Chris Jericho, and nobody needs to win matches more than Dean Ambrose right now. So him taking 2 at 2 pay-per-views would be a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Also, Jericho gets meaner every time he actually loses a match right now, so I would like to see what depths he can descend to.
You stupid idiot. He's the best. I love him insulting people, and thinking that stupid idiot's the dirtiest thing that you can call someone.
Talking about the individual cost of each of his boots was he's like $1,500 worth of boots. This one is $750. This one's $750.
All right, we got our number 1 contender tag match: Enzo and Cass against the Vaudevillains. NXT explodes.
Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
Oh, that was a great segment.
With bringing back the singing.
Everything was great. I think Vaudevillains getting a lot of mic time is going to help them more and more. Yes, they're good at everything. They're just bad at having a compelling entrance that gets a reaction from people.
They interrupted their own entrance last night, so,
which was the right thing to do.
I did not come up with this idea. Someone on Twitter did, whose name is escaping me at the moment, so I'm not taking credit for this idea, but it's genius. They need to put some kind of filter on their microphone so it sounds like they're coming through a gramophone or something. Just anything their gimmick is missing.
Well, I thought it was sort of mind-blowing because they clearly stated on Raw they emulate a simpler era. So they specifically said we are not time displaced villains.
Right.
We are people who are hipsters to such a degree that we think living in the 1890s was cooler than living today. And so all you jerks, that's the first time that they've ever said that in any capacity on either roster.
And that's good. It's good to establish that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise, that's just definitively way too goofy a gimmick for the main roster. As much as I would love it, but
we knew who Aiden English was, but they were never completely clear about whether Simon Gotch got dumped out of a Stargate or something.
Yes, he was an escapee of the holodeck. But yeah, great segment with all three teams that are very entertaining. So who do you think is going to become the number one contender to the New Day's tag titles?
I'm sticking with what we went with last week in the Dudleys, who were absent from television this week. Will keep Enzo and Cass from winning, letting the Vaudevillains win. And then they can finish their feud at Extreme Rules. We get a full month of build between New Day and the Vaudevillains, who hopefully that time with the New Day allows the Vaudevillains to really, grow and work as a team on the mic, and we'll know more about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm leaning in that direction too. Admittedly, partially because nothing would make me happier than there being multiple tag team feuds going on that do not necessarily involve the belts in all capacities. Because that's been the trap they've been in forever. It's like, you're not feuding with the New Day, you're basically not a tag team. So that idea is great to me, and I think that the Vaudevillains and New Day will play off each other extremely well. The throwback versus the internet savvy, youngsters. That is a great pairing. And Enzo and Cass, they'll get their moment.
Yeah.
They don't need the belts right now to get the crowd on their side. People have bought in on them wholesale, so this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I think it's too soon for Enzo and Cass to be challenging New Day for the titles. So yeah, I will also pick the Vaudevillains, and I think that 3 weeks of New Day just goofing on the Vaudevillains is going to be wonderful television.
Agreed.
We are going to get to see the first main roster pay-per-view match between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. I'm sure of a million more to follow. I'm very excited. The video package that they did for them on Monday was absolutely dynamite. Did a great job of explaining. People were saying we should have seen this video package day one when Sami came up, but I strongly disagree. I think it helps a lot seeing them have bad blood and have the announcers be these two guys hate each other, and then right when we're getting close to the pay-per-view, be here is the full story in case you missed it.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you on that. I think that the video package is the thing you save for right before the pay-per-view, and I think they timed that well. I think that package did a good job of documenting their history without having to dig up tape libraries that they don't have the rights to. I think that that is a feud that should go on for the remainder of their careers in WWE. I'm not saying only that, but that's something they should come back to time and time again. And that was a really good first establishing shot of where that history was and where it's going from here.
Yeah, my dream for them is that for the next 6 or 7 years, they're the Cena and Orton of WWE, but compelling, and you don't mind that they keep running into each other.
Yeah, Michaels and Hart, they liked each other.
Yeah. Orton and Cena, they're running up against each other as just here are our two biggest stars. It's not they hate each other's guts and here's why. Yeah,
I think that's something they could definitely make money off of for many, many years if they're smart about it. And I think this opening match will be really good because by all indication, their time in NXT produced some really solid fucking matches. So I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever had a bad match against each other. So and they've had a million of them. But the question is, who do you think wins this first one?
I think Owens in a cheap way. I think he gets on the verge of losing and he does something extremely untoward. And he will claim his victory when it is apparent to literally everyone that he did not earn that victory.
If that doesn't happen, I assume it's a situation where even if Zayn wins, he loses. Where he's just gonna, once again be powerbombed onto an apron, or just something terrible is going to happen to him after that necessitates a rematch, even if Owens is the one who loses.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, I'm leaning more towards Alex's prediction. I think that Owens does something underhanded and allows him to get the victory in this first WWE pay-per-view meeting between the two. But I'm looking for them. I'm expecting these two to have the mindset going in of we're going to steal this entire show, and I expect it to be, if not the best match on the card, one of the 3 best matches on the card. Because I'm looking at the card right now, and this card has a ton of potential.
for a payback for like a low tier pay-per-view, hell yeah. Like this is by far this is the only payback I've maybe ever been like remotely excited for.
Yes. Speaking of a match I'm excited for, Intercontinental title match, Cesaro versus The Miz. Man, this is probably going to be awesome as well.
Yeah, man. Like, okay, so the thing with these two is that putting them together has kind of highlighted the two things that maybe both of those guys are not good at. Cesaro, not the best talker, charismatic dude, like looks great, obviously has the crowd on his side, does not have the talking skills The Miz has. The Miz, on the other hand, super charismatic, great shit heel villain, okay wrestler, solid enough, can get by and have some decent matches, and is generally better, I think, in multi-person matches than like in one-on-one situations. But those two guys combined, there's just something there.
Yeah.
Even for either one falters, like they're just combining forces in a way that makes a hastily thrown together Intercontinental title feud way more compelling than it should be.
I'm so ready for Cesaro to just swing Miz into the barricade repeatedly again.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Except this time, well, he's a good guy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, there's been like Maurice has been so great in being paired with Miz, but it just adds that extra level of like, oh, I can't wait to see Cesaro get his hands on the Miz. Like, especially him going to swing him and then Maurice tossing herself on Miz. Like, for a brief instant, I was hoping like, oh my god, is he going to swing both of them? But no, that would have been silly.
Miz is the Rick Martel of our generation. He's that slimy, dirtbag heel that you just want to see someone destroy.
I'm going to go one step further. I feel like he's a lot closer to the Ted DiBiase of our generation. Like, he's just so good and such an upper level, just like next level heel. Like, I think that his thing is sort of like crossover appeal level of like, oh boy, I want this guy to lose in a big bad way.
Yeah. If you take the money angle out of it and you just leave the charisma and just sort of like the absolute sliminess of it all, yeah, I think you're right.
Who are we predicting to win? Do we think that Cesaro is going to capture his first Intercontinental title at Payback?
No. I mean, you don't introduce and you don't bring her into the mix right away if you're going to have her immediately fail at keeping the title on Miz.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that Maurice will get involved. Miz will maintain the title for at least one more month. Yeah, I don't know. Or who knows? Maybe Cesaro will bring Zack Ryder out as his his support staff, and that will lead to something happening. Assuming anyone actually remembers that Zack Ryder is still there.
Zack Ryder's dad comes out to help Cesaro.
I agree. I think that Miz is going to retain, and I think that it's going to be through Maurice getting involved and costing him the match, costing Cesaro the match, and maybe we'll toss Zack Ryder back in the mix, and maybe we'll get a multi-person match for the title at Extreme Rules. But I think that Miz retains, and then Cesaro finally captures it at the next one.
Seems like a good spot for a one-on-one ladder match at Extreme Rules, because then interference doesn't matter, and there's no champion's advantage.
Yeah, and then you have Miz could get close to winning, and Zack Ryder could appear out of nowhere to push him off the ladder again.
Totally. Callbacks.
Yeah,
that's what wrestling's been missing.
We got the women's title match where Charlotte will retain against Natalya with Bret Hart in her corner.
Bret Hart, who apparently does not really want to be there.
Doesn't want to be there.
Is happy enough.
He's such a salesman.
Yeah. He's such a miserable shit, but I love that about him.
I mean, he's got reasons to be miserable, to be fair. Like that dude's cynicism is well earned. So I will never give him shit for that. That said, I don't think Natalya wins this.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Not with the support system she has.
Right. Well, I mean, these two had a great NXT, like a classic NXT women's match with the same sort of like Rick in one corner and Bret in the other corner thing. Bret's already said how much he's looking forward to putting Ric Flair on the sharpshooter, so look for that. But it'll be. I think it's going to be a great match, and Charlotte's going to take use of distraction to defeat Natalya.
Man, this match better be like 20 minutes long, since it's the only women's story they're telling right now.
Yeah, Sasha and Becky kind of got put on the back burner there for a little bit, didn't they? I mean, I'm not mad that Natalya is involved in this. I've always thought Natalya was, underrated. Never really given the best chances to shine. That what was it, the Roadblock? That match she had, or I don't remember if it was she had a match, didn't she, at that show?
Yes, it was Charlotte versus Natalya.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was a good, solid match, and that kind of reminded me. It's like, oh yeah, Natalya can be good when they actually kind of let her free a little bit.
Yeah. I hope they give it 15 minutes or so. I think they probably will. It seemed like they were building to a Becky versus Emma match potentially, but they went with Kalisto versus Ryback for the last match. But maybe they'll end that, and then we'll get two women's matches at Extreme Rules. Who knows? Yes, the women have gotten a little bit of a short shrift in the past couple weeks, but if Charlotte and Natalya have a Dynamite match, I think that people will probably forget about that.
Yeah, and I mean, the opportunity is always there, and the main thing of note is that they have this collection of talent, and they are using it. Emma was on Raw this week and got some decent time to do stuff. They're not just, okay, yeah, you did your WrestleMania match, now you're all gone. They haven't been in the mix of the stories as much, but at least they've been present, and they have kept those characters in the public eye.
Yeah. Our WWE World Heavyweight Championship match, our main event, Roman Reigns versus AJ Styles. I think this match is probably going to rule, and I think that Reigns is going to retain due to Bullet Club intrigue, and then AJ will have his hands full for the next month with something other than Roman Reigns.
Yeah, that's where I lean. And as much as I am not the biggest fan of the Roman Reigns era as a champion, I will say that I don't need AJ to win this. I think that feud, especially if they throw Balor into the mix, I think that's going to be fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I am. I mean, we talked about it earlier, and it really seems like the smart decision. And I don't know who Roman Reigns' next opponent is, but you've got so many guys that he can go through until, the time where the real feud everyone is waiting for happens, when either Seth Rollins comes back and wants to claim to his title or anything, something like that. A real opportunity where Reigns could lose the belt. Stuff like AJ in the middle that helps build onto a new story for someone like AJ is the right way to do things.
Yeah, I think Payback is going to be a pretty good pay-per-view, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Same. And I've never said that about a Payback in my life.
Yeah, it's nice that they're kind of stepping on the gas instead of the brakes right after Mania, and it already feels like we're building to some things for Extreme Rules and beyond.
Yeah, all of the things are in place for a potentially exciting next few pay-per-views. So it all starts with Payback. That's on Sunday. We'll all be watching, of course, and then we'll see how good our predictions were, and we'll recap it next week. One last thing before we go. Lucha Underground, man, this thing is through the roof.
Hell yeah, man.
Damn it, Bill.
Get it? Because they...
I was shaking my head and I realized that's not good podcasting.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Just
perfect
so
audio. Yeah.
I was shaking my head at you.
Well, thank you for that. Some match, huh? Some first meeting between Matanza and Mil Muertes.
Yeah, before it started, I was excited because it's some questions. Regardless of what the answers are, we're gonna get answers to questions, and maybe have some new ones. We'll know if Muertes is actually capable of hurting Matanza. We'll know if anyone is capable of hurting Matanza. Maybe Matanza's incapable of being damaged by even Mil Muertes. So, where do you go from there? But yeah, Mil Muertes can hurt him, and apparently can put him through the roof of Dario Cueto's office. So now we don't even know which one of them is the bigger threat.
Yeah, I was actually, it really took me by surprise, because I anticipated that Muertes might get him on the ropes, but that Matanza would just defeat him. But a non-finish is definitely an exciting way to go with it.
Means we're going to get more of them, which I am absolutely ready for after seeing one round.
For sure.
And how great is it that a league in this day and age can present a heel versus heel kind of storyline and have it be that compelling?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we all know how good Lucha Underground is at storytelling.
Dude, yeah. And it's something... So I have to kind of cajole the guys on my podcast to watch it more often because, it requires a little more effort for those that don't have the El Rey network. Mm-hmm. For my part, I watched the entire first season in Spanish because I don't get El Rey, but the Spanish network, my cable provider had it for the first season, but doesn't have it this season. Mm-hmm. So once the iTunes thing came around, I was like, great, this is how I'm going to watch it. And that's how I've been watching. I watch it on the phone on my commute, and it's been awesome. So I have to cajole them to kind of watch it more often because it is a little tougher. But everyone that eventually does kind of sign on for it is like, holy shit, you weren't kidding. It's never just, oh, yeah, no, it's neat. It's like, oh, my God. Right. Because there's just nothing else like it anywhere. There's no other show that does professional wrestling in this particular style and with writing that fucking makes sense. It's fantastical and weird, but it all has an internal logic that works. And I said this on our last show, how refreshing is it to watch a wrestling show where anyone can lose and they don't seem worse for it?
Right. Yeah. It's they're really, really good at what they do, and we've talked about it before of we would just even if there were no wrestling, it would still be a compelling television show. Because these characters are all fully thought out and fully developed, and the stories that they're telling are so compelling that it's just icing on the cake that there's also great wrestling.
Yeah, and the wrestling is some of the best you will see on television. What they are able to do in an hour with that talent is really something.
Yeah. And I'm very looking forward to this week because we're getting a 4-way elimination trios match for the titles.
Oh, that trio stuff is so good. The tournament stuff is always so good. I have nothing but the most excitement for this match. I think it's going to be spectacular.
I'm so ready for it. I was wondering how they were going to tweak the format in any way, and they did a good job of okay, now it's just madness. 4 trios teams, 12 of you in the ring, and you could lose to any of these teams. We're not even building a number 1 contender.
Yeah. So cool. One thing I want to get into, and we're gonna tag this on the time codes because it's not a spoiler, but if you want to avoid anything having to do with Lucha Underground tapings, you can feel free to skip this part. And Mark, I know you're sensitive to this, but not a spoiler, but Matanza did get injured at a taping this past weekend where his arm got cut up either punching Cueto's window or putting someone through the window, and they had to stop the match because he was pretty cut up. But according to the performer, he got stitched up and he should be back in action soon. But I'm sure it won't be storyline that Matanza bleeds.
Yeah, so these pretty far in advance too. They're pretty far ahead of the story at this point.
They're midway through taping season 3.
Okay, so this is season 2 is completely done at this point. They got that stuff in the can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing with Lucha Underground is knowing that doesn't change anything for me because I don't know, they could kill Matanza at the end of the season and then revive him in season 3 and it wouldn't be weird. We've already seen them do that.
Yeah. Also, so much of the actual story, all of the actual story is usually advanced through vignettes and backstage stuff, which you get to see none of when you go to taping. So when you go to taping, almost all the time, it's here's a match, and you don't know where it fits into things. The last tapings I went to, they actually did a lot of sort of explaining in the ring, but that was pretty atypical for Lucha Underground taping. Yeah, you just go and you watch cool matches and people react to stuff and you sort of get surprised of oh, this person has this title or this person's with this person now, weird. And then you get to watch a whole season plus of television to figure out how all the pieces came together. When I went to my first Lucha Underground taping, they had a match for an ancient Aztec medallion, and I had absolutely no idea what was happening because that was the television weekly product was nowhere close to even introducing that concept yet.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's a thing that's going to be happening at some point. I'll watch out for that. So, like, even watching shit go down, I didn't understand what was happening.
Tragically, whenever I'm in LA, it is usually for work stuff, so I don't have a lot of spare time. That said, I've been desperately wanting to try to find my way into one of those tapings one of these days. It sounds like it is a blast.
Well, let me know next time you come in.
So
let me know next time you come into town, and I'll let you know whether they're taping that weekend.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll hit you up about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's going to do us. Anyone have any further thoughts on Lucha Underground, NXT? Sadly, Total Divas had its season finale, so I have to wait all the way until fall for Total Bellas to come around. Anyone have any thoughts on anything else that went down in the world of wrestling this week?
You know,
I think that's
you know, on a personal level, I'd just like to send a shout out to the folks at Kaiju Big Battle and also Chikara. So at PAX every PAX, which is a video game fan convention, we do a thing called Paxomania, which is basically just like video game wrestling, but with a lot of dumb theatrics. The folks at Kaiju came out, and also Ophidian and Argus from Chikara came out and were a part of our show, and that was super, super fun. Also, the Kaiju people managed to get us into an all-referees battle royal, which I lost in about a minute. And
awesome.
that was some of the most fun I've maybe had in a very, very long time. So I just wanted to give a shout-out and thanks to those guys.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Is there a way for people to watch that or not?
So there is an archive of Paxomania up, I believe, on Twitch. There will be an official edited together video probably in the next couple of months or so. We have some folks who do it volunteer, and that's usually, those videos are pretty good, but they take a little time to put together. But yeah, look for the Twitch archive of that. I don't know if there's any footage of the Kaiju show anywhere, but if you can find their Somerville show, I'm in it for about a minute and a half.
Fantastic. Alex, thanks so much for joining us this week. Where can people find you?
I am Alex_Navarro, just like the guitar player, on Twitter. I am not really on any other social media, but you can find me on giantbomb.com, generally speaking. And thank you guys for having me on. This was super fun. I always like being able to talk with new people about this stuff.
Of course. Glad to have you here.
Well, thanks to Mark for setting it up. Great suggestion, Mark.
Well, sometimes I do things right.
All the time. Mark, where can people find you?
Mark_Normandin.
That's Twitter.
And I guess also at, on Twitter. And SB Nation MLB or overthemonster.com if you care about baseball and the Red Sox, respectively.
And you should care about both of those things. And and I'm on Twitter at Sundown Motel, cagesightseats.com, sbnation.com/wrestling. If you want to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, please do that. Tell your friends about Rudo Radio. And if you want to leave us a review and you don't even want to think of a review to leave us, just go ahead and go to iTunes, leave us any star rating you want, and say, this podcast is the giant bomb. Get it? All right. Anyway, thanks.
Shaking my head again.
Okay, good.
That's really
got you
terrible
twice.
podcasting.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to chime in there or not, but I just want to laugh at it. So.
All right, it's good. All right, that all came together really nicely at the end there. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Alex for joining us. Thanks to Mark as always, and we'll talk to you guys next week.